Seasoned serial entrepreneur with decades of experience dedicated to helping established business owners break through plateaus, scale, and achieve true entrepreneurial freedom. He's known for simplifying complex ideas and providing practical, actionable insights, like in his latest #1 best-selling book, Your Business Growth Playbook: Breakthrough Strategies to Scale Your Business for Business Owners Who've Outgrown Hustle. I like that. Where did I leave off in your bio here? My screen just jumped around on me. Jeremy is a frequent media commentator and speaker, having been featured on hundreds of podcasts in prominent outlets like NPR, Morning Edition, Fox News, and PBS. With that, I am so excited to welcome Jeremy to the show.
Thank you so much, Kristi. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I am so excited for this conversation today. You and I got acquainted through Seth Goldstein's podcast mastery group. And so when I was reading your background and everything, I was like, oh, this would be a great conversation to bring you on the show and to talk about a past marketing mistake that you've experienced. So quick shout out to Seth and his community for bringing awesome people together and providing great resources on podcasting for those getting into it, those who are seasoned and trying to up level. He's got something for everyone in there.
He does. We love the community and all that he has in there, especially the people.
Yes, for sure. For sure. I was actually just thinking about it today. I'm like, I need to go in there and ask a question. I want to get advice on it. So I'm going to do that as soon as we're done with our conversation today. But Jeremy, when we talked about you coming on the show, you had mentioned an experience that you had with marketing where you were relying too much on one lead source. And I really don't know that much about it. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today. But I would like to ask you, where would you kind of like to start off in terms of laying kind of the foundation for like, where were you at in your business? Like, how long were you doing this? Where do you want to start with setting the stage for us?
Yeah, well, let me take one step further back and touch on this whole like marketing mistake thing. Marketing mistakes, or really just mistakes in business in general, are something to be sought out, right? Like that's where we learn things. So the idea of not making any mistakes means you're not trying enough things. So I've certainly made my share of mistakes, as have so many of your guests on the show, which I love. And we can learn from those, not just individually, but also from each other. So there's a ton of mistakes.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I was literally just talking to someone like this week about the show and who like the guests that I bring on, because they're like, oh, maybe I can like find guests for you. And we were talking about it. We're like, well, basically any business owner, because we all have marketing mistakes. So yes. I love that. If you're not making mistakes, then you're not trying new things, and then you're missing out on opportunities. So thank you for that.
You know, it's interesting because we can go too far down one extreme. It's not like we should seek out failure, right? But we should be trying things, de-risking as best we can, but also understanding we can't eliminate risk, and we try something, we experiment. And the key there is like the quick recovery, so that after we have something that doesn't go as planned, we can learn from it, implement that change, and get back to growth from there. So, there's one story in particular I think about from one of my businesses, and this was in the earlier days of Google AdWords. And as a business, we were trying it out, like we all try out new platforms when they come out. And when we did this, what we found is for every $1 we'd spend on our ads, we get about $4 of new revenue in the top of the funnel, which is fantastic, right? You spend $1 and get $4 in like right away. That's a cash machine. So we did what most of us would do, and we put more money into it, right? We followed the winner. A key point here, by the way, is we were tracking our numbers and we were tracking our lead sources, so we knew how much we were spending and how much business was coming from that lead source. That's something I see business owners don't always do as well as they could. And that was really vital for us to even know how well we were or were not doing. Yeah. So when we saw that 4-to-1 return, we put more money into it. I think at the time we were spending like $10,000 a month. And so we doubled down and we were doing $20,000 a month with AdWords. And we now saw that 4-to-1 went to like 3-to-1. Still pretty good. And so we again invested more, and now we're spending like $30,000 a month on our AdWords. And now we'd see like $2 for each dollar we put out. So we were seeing what we often refer to as like diminishing returns. It was still good, but it wasn't as good. However, at the end of the day, you're doing the math on this, we're still seeing an incremental amount of new business coming in. So it still made sense to continue pursuing this, right? So as this goes on, we got to a certain inflection point. I believe it was somewhere around 40,000 a month in ad spend, that for every dollar we spent, we were only seeing like $1 in new business. So we're breaking even. Now, the good news is this was a business where we knew our customer lifetime value, our CLV. And that's a really important number to know, because we were not just a one-hit wonder, single transaction business. There was a recurring revenue component. So even though we were only looking at that money we made back in the front end, we still knew how much we could spend to acquire a customer, our customer acquisition cost, CAC or CAC in the industry, right? So we knew our customer acquisition cost. We knew our customer lifetime value. And like any good continuity business, we were looking at our ratio of our CAC to our CLV, right? So we know how much we can spend to acquire that customer. So breaking even was still okay. But like many business owners, we had other channels and things we were pursuing. And next thing you knew, we took our eye off that ball, and that ROI actually flipped. So now that dollar we were spending was getting us like 50 cents in new business. And that's not so good, right? Because now it's not a matter of how much do we make in return up front. Now we're looking at how long until we can make back all the money we spent. And that window went from immediacy to 1 month, 2 months, and so on, started to get worse and worse. And that wasn't good. So because we were so reliant on that and spending so much on this one lead source, we had to make a change quick. And so what we decided to do is we realized we could learn all the AdWords stuff inside and out, have someone internally manage this, do it ourselves. Like there's a few different options in business, right? You can do something yourself, have a team member do it, hire someone to do it, like as a contract, hire an agency, or do nothing about it at all. So the option we chose is we went out and we found an agency to help us out, a company that was sort of like on the cutting edge of all the AdWords stuff. And they took over the management of our account for us. Like right away, they did two really valuable things. One is they were able to cut that ad spend like in half. And two, they're able to double the efficiency of those ads. So now we went from, whatever it was, like the 50 cents to $1. Now we went and we were seeing like, the break even again, but then it got even better because of the work they did with negative keywords and all this other stuff, right? So they effectively 4x'd the result we were getting trying to do it on our own, which immediately obviously is paying for itself and putting us back in the money. So that was a huge win.
Yeah.
And more importantly, we could go back and work on other parts of the business knowing someone else is managing this and taking care of it for us and improving the efficiency of it and all that. So, we were really reliant on this one lead source that was starting to dry up.
Yeah.
And, any business owner you talk to, if there's one lead source where they're just crushing it, doing really well, at some point the competition comes in and starts to compete against you, right? Or the market tides shift or things outside of your control come into play that start to affect your business. And if you're too reliant on that one lead source, that can overnight turn to nothing.
Yeah. I appreciate that message. And that is something I feel like I have that conversation all the time with prospective clients who have relied on referrals and word of mouth. They're like, It's been great. I've built up this reputation for myself. I have these referrals coming in. But eventually, right, it usually can't sustain a business for the long haul, and you don't have control over it.
Right.
So I hear it all the time in that sense. What's that?
Like, look at SEO, right? Like, if you look at your traffic numbers for when you're ranking in first position versus second versus third, fourth, etc., it's often like, a double your traffic as you go up, right? So if you're seeing, 1,000 visitors a day in first position, you move to second, you might see like 500. You move to third, you might see 250. And that's a dramatic difference. And we're talking individual position changes. You go from first page to second page. If your business is built on SEO, which like you should still be doing, but if that's your only lead source, overnight when, the algorithms change, all your traffic can just disappear or cut down to 10% or whatever it is. So like any of these lead sources that you don't control are dangerous to be entirely reliant on.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. That diversity in marketing efforts and lead sources is really important. First of all, I just want to say I love how data driven you are, Jeremy, because I'm a huge fan of data. You're throwing out all these numbers and I'm like, yes, we're geeking out on numbers. I love it. Some of our listeners may be like, okay, too many terms, too many numbers, but that's okay. It's important. Yes, yes. And it's so important to track, right? Because had you not been tracking it, you wouldn't, as closely as it sounds like you were, you and your team were, you wouldn't have identified that there was an issue probably nearly as soon as you did. And you wouldn't have been able to kind of course correct in that. So I want to go back to your point about, so you were originally managing this ad spend in-house. You had
Yeah.
someone internally doing it. Okay. And so then when you made the decision to still keep, I think that this is such an interesting nuance to this story that I can't remember ever fully discussing on this show before. So I really want to dig into it. The fact that you're not saying we're not going to do this, we're not going to do away with this tactic, we're just going to change how we're doing it. So rather than using internal resources to steer this and to execute it, we're going to go outside and find somebody. So what can you tell me about that kind of decision process that you went through?
Yeah, so anything that we do in our business, right? If you're a solopreneur, you're doing everything, right? And as you grow, you start to bring on team members, right? Or companies or vendors or software, whatever, right? You find other ways to get things done that don't rely on you doing it yourself. So when we look at how you do that, right? First, you have to know what it is that you want done. Define success, right? Especially when we're talking marketing. If you don't know what your definition of success is, you might just keep doing something because it's an action without looking at what that result is. And we know what success looks like. We can determine, do we keep doing it? Do we change it? Is this a win? Is it a failure? And so forth. There's a book I love, Good to Great. And one of the things that, Jim Collins talks about in this is this whole idea that, and I love this quote, that good is the enemy of great. So if we have a marketing campaign and it completely bombs, right? It produces 0 leads, no traffic, whatever. Well, that's easy. You cut it, you stop doing it. When you have one that's knocking it out of the park and is doing great, well, yeah, you keep that. It's wonderful. But most things fall in that middle good ground where you're like, well, it's getting some traction. And so you end up just keeping on. You continue doing the thing that's doing okay, but it's sapping resources, money, attention, all of this when it could be great or it could be shut down, right? So we don't know this until we actually track those numbers. And once you know what your definition of success is and you've sort of figured it out, now you can have someone else do this. So if it's something you're an expert in, they can follow your system, right? And so you're hiring someone to go through your step-by-step system and get the predefined result. That's one of the most common ways we expand our business, right? The other option is you're ideally hiring people or companies that are smarter than you, that can do things better than you ever could on your own. They're bringing in a whole wealth of expertise to you. And so in those cases, again, have a clear definition of success, but lean on their expertise and have them hit that definition of success for you, right? Yeah. And so that can be an employee, that can be a VA, that can be a contractor, it can be an agency, right? It can be a software platform. There are many ways to get the outcome you want. It just varies based on what the task is and where your expertise is on that.
Right. So this is so interesting to me because I'm like trying to put myself in your shoes at that time, right? You're running these ads, you're like, this is great, we're crushing it. And then the results kind of start going down. So how did you come to the conclusion that like, we should still be doing this? We just need someone smarter than us to do it better. How did you
this was one of those areas.
That?
Like we knew it was producing and we knew it did well and we knew we were able to get business successfully and profitably. What we also knew is this was, a constant, changing tides, right? The whole world of PPC was just changing so rapidly. And it was one of those things that we knew we could learn how to do it better. Endless courses and experts and books and all that. We could learn it, right? And so in business, when we offer products, right, one of the things I love talking about is, there's sort of 3 versions of it that we can offer. One is like the do-it-yourself version, where you show someone how to do it and then they go off and do it on their own, right? If you've read a book on something or taken a course, that's the DIY. You learn how to do it and then you go do it yourself. The next level up is sort of like this, like do it with you. This is when you hire like a coach, right? Or a teacher or a mentor or someone who's going to be there with you and answer your questions while you do it yourself still, but they're going to be there and do it with you. And the third one is where you just outsource it. And this is the done for you, right? This is usually your most expensive, but it also means you're outsourcing or tasking somebody else with a predefined outcome, right? So like in the world of marketing, you might bring on a marketing company. Here's a great example, right? I knew a guy who worked at chiropractors. So his whole deal was he's like, look, I can teach you how to do the marketing. And chiropractors could follow his steps and do all the marketing themselves, right? There's also like, look, we'll do it with you. Like we'll provide you some templates and some content, and then you go and do it. And that was a higher price point. The highest price point, though, was the done for you, which is like, look, just give us your list. We're going to handle all the marketing for you, and you just take on the new business. So there's sort of these three different tiers. And you've got to figure out as a business, which one of those you want to pay for various services within your own business. Some things we want to learn how to do, and we want to master that and be really good at that. Others, we just want the predefined result.
Yeah. I love that you're talking about this, because this was something that I've even realized in the last year, I would say, in my business. The clients I love working with the most want to learn marketing. They might not like marketing, but they want to learn enough so that they are in a better position to make smart hiring decisions in terms of what can we do internally? What do we need to outsource to somebody else? What am I, the business owner, maybe capable of doing realistically? And getting really clear on what those pieces are that we need to do, and then who's going to do them. Yeah. So I love your point here about like, okay, we did it ourselves. And especially in the world of ads and even SEO, I mean, there's a lot of marketing things I would put into this category of like the things that are changing rapidly all the time and you have to stay on top of. It sounds like that's what you guys realized, right? Was like, there's just too much. There's too much for us to stay on top of, and it makes way more sense to go hire an expert who can do it for us. Yeah. And oh, by the way, I would bet that you were in a much better position to hire the right provider for yourself because you had already done it yourself. So you knew the questions to ask and what was important in vetting those options.
Yeah, before hiring for really any role, it's good to know at least a base amount about it. So you can ask intelligent questions when talking to companies or talking to prospective hires, right? When you know nothing about it at all, it's a dangerous place to be in because you have no idea what the service is worth paying for, how to define success, what's challenging about it, you know, what needs to be known. Because there are certain things you can hire a lower level, entry level person to do and just follow your system. Others, you want to hire the brightest, smartest folks who know the stuff, who live, breathe, eat, sleep this all day long, right? Like back to the PPC stuff. These are folks who like, they go to the conferences and attend the latest and greatest. They're on the calls with the Googles and they're, you know, managing client accounts all day, and they have a whole team and they're seeing what works with other clients and leveraging those best practices for me. I want all those benefits, right? I could go to all those things, but I've got a business to run. I'd rather focus on our core competencies, knowing enough about what's challenging about it and why I want to hire someone else to do it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, on that done for you, with you, do it yourself, don't do it side of things. You know, a more recent example is as I was publishing my book, a lot of folks are like, yeah, I'll just, you know, design my own cover. And I'm like, look, I know I am not a designer. Could I design a cover? Yeah. Is it going to get results? No. Well, not the results I want. Right. So other people happily use AI tools. They use the software solution. They say, hey, I'll have software do this for me. And I'm looking at that saying, also not what I want. So many folks hire a designer, and a designer can do a design, maybe for book covers. Right. Well, the direction I chose to go was like, I hired a designer who all they do are book covers. Not only that, they only do nonfiction business books, and they know the space really well, and they know what's going to sell and convert, and you know what the do's and don'ts are and all that. They have deep, deep, deep subject matter expertise.
I love
it. That is worth paying so much more for than me trying to do it on my own, using software, using a generic designer. Or many of the designers I talked to effectively said, yeah, give me 5 different covers you like. And what they didn't say, but they were saying was, and I'll give you the average of those 5 covers.
Right.
Like that's like the worst approach, right? So expertise is worth paying for.
Yes. I love that example. I think that's such a clear one for listeners to kind of wrap their brains around in terms of like, how do you want to approach it, right? As a business owner, that's your decision to make. So Jeremy, I'm curious because you gave other examples too, right? Like there are certain things where you're like, oh, I can hire a lower level, like entry level person to execute this thing, or I'm going to go get the person who works in this specific space, in this niche, and this. And so how do you as a business owner, I'm asking this because I want your advice for those listening to the show. How do you figure out the thing that you're hiring for and which route do you go in? Like, is there a set of criteria that you kind of like walk yourself through?
Yeah, so for any of these, whether you're hiring someone even part-time, outsourcing, hiring a company, be clear on your definition of success, right? So this usually comes down to key performance indicators or KPIs. Know your metrics. So for example, let's say you're hiring a customer support person, right? They're going to work 40 hours a week. They're overseas, they're remote, and they're handling things. What are the metrics that matter? Do you want a certain customer satisfaction rating? Do you want a certain, first response time on support inquiries that come in, a certain percentage of the phone calls that get answered, versus going to a voicemail and so forth? Like, figure out what those benchmarks are, and then whoever or wherever you hire, hold them accountable to those, right? Now, for some things, if you were doing it yourself and you were doing a good enough job, you can probably create the system for how to do that, the documentation, the steps, and so forth. And then you can, as you're interviewing someone, show them that system and say, hey, here's how I'm defining success. Here's how you'll know if you're doing a good job. I'll know if you're doing a good job, and how the roadmap for how to get there. By the way, when you hire someone, like, that is refreshing for them to see during an interview that you know what you're talking about and what they're being hired for. Many newer business owners hire someone into a dumpster fire and they're like, please, just, I need help. And the person has no idea what they're getting into. And that's not good for them. It's not good for you. They don't know where they stand. Like, that's unhealthy, right? So when you have a definition and the steps, you can bring someone on, show them the system, they can run the system, and one of three things happens. Ideally, happy path. They follow your system, they get the result you want. Yay, everything's great. More often, especially if it's your first time hiring for this role, the person will follow the system and not get the result you want. And that's because the system needs some work. And you realize, oh, the thing I thought was clear wasn't actually clear. Let me go ahead and revise that. You update the system. It's a living, breathing, fluid document. Then they follow the system, get the result that you wanted. Great. Other times you'll have the third option, which is you have the system. It's a good system. They don't get the result you want. And it's because they didn't follow the system, right? And now that's an opportunity for coaching and management. And either they follow the system and hit that definition of success, or like they might not be a good fit for the team, right? So those are kind of the three directions we go. Ideally, most of the time, they follow the system, you get the result you want. That's great. Now, other kinds of tasks are the things where you don't really know how to do it and you're not an expert, right? So for example, how many of us should be doing our own legal work or accounting work in our businesses? Very few of us, right? Like, we don't want to go to law school or go get our CPA and do all these things just to do that in our own business. That would not be a good use of our time or expertise, right? That is something where you're going to have someone that you'll probably outsource to. Now, at a certain size company, you'll now have in-house counsel, right? And in-house full-time, full charge bookkeepers, and maybe even a team handling accounts receivable, accounts payable, and all those things. That's fine. But generally, you're going to outsource for those sorts of higher level tasks that are not your core competency or area of expertise, or where you would be the right person to create the system for it.
Yep. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And so one thing I'm hearing from you, Jeremy, is like, it's really important for you as the business owner to understand whatever the task is, whether it's running ads or maybe refining your website or doing email marketing, whatever the thing is, really looking at the data you currently have and looking at the process that you hopefully have documented in determining, A, are we getting the results that we want? And if we're not, why? Because maybe that means we need an expert. And B, is it sustainable for us to keep doing this? Or maybe we are getting the result we want, but it doesn't make sense for me as a business owner to keep doing this thing. So how can I hire someone to come in and execute what I've been doing?
Yeah, spot on.
I love that. I think that's so, like, it's so simple, but how many business owners out there don't have kind of that clarity of understanding what type of person am I trying to hire for this thing? And when does it make sense to hire someone versus deciding that a tactic isn't going to work anymore? I mean, going back to the example that you shared at the beginning, right? You're like, we know we can be successful with this because we were when we started. We just think it's too fast paced of a changing environment for us to stay on top of. And so let's hire an expert to take it off our plates.
I mean, and that goes back to like the accounting and legal side of things, like laws and accounting rules and all these things, they change all the time, right? That's not, unless that's your full-time business, it's good to hear about these things, but to be on top of all of it all day and figuring it out like is not the best use of your time. Someone whose full-time career is this stuff, who is doing the continuing education, all this, like that is great. They will learn how to do that and do a much better job than you and I ever will in handling those tasks. So that's really key.
Do you think that marketing is a tougher area of business to navigate because business owners think they should be able to do it versus like legal's pretty cut and dry, right? Like if I didn't go to law school, I'm not qualified to like be my own legal counsel. Whereas I don't know. I mean, I'm a marketer, so like I have my own thoughts, but what do you think?
Yeah, so marketing is one of those things. I heard this from a mentor of mine years ago, who was like a really financially savvy business coach, and so we'd always been looking at the P&Ls and the cash flow statements and balance sheets and all that stuff, right? And one of the things that he talks about that he looks for in looking through the numbers is what percentage of gross revenue is being spent on marketing, because many business owners actually underspend because they view it as an expense. But if you're not doing any marketing, how do you expect to be getting new business into your company? So commonly he'll see a company that's feeling stuck and he'll look and see, well, gee, they're only spending 2% of gross revenue on marketing. What would happen if we spent some more money to bring some more business in? Like, what could that do? And so there's sort of certain targets where you want to have that spend. So some business owners look at marketing as just an expense. But if you step back and you actually look at your numbers and you can see how much you're spending on marketing and how many customers are coming from that, now you can see it as a revenue center in the business. You see an expense and you see an income, and you can calculate your ROI, your return on your investment. And when you do that and you start looking at your various investments in your business and how they pay off, what kind of dividends they produce, now you're in a much better spot. If you, for example, had two different mutual funds you're invested in, and one pays out much higher dividends than the other and much more predictably and so forth, right? Like, do you want to have more money in a higher ROI investment or a lower ROI investment? If you can get 1% on your savings account at one bank or 5% at a different bank, where do you put your money, right? Like, we get it when it's that cut and dry, but when we look at different things on our P&L, our profit and loss statement, and we just see them as expenses as opposed to investment opportunities, that's a challenge. So I challenge our listeners to calculate and track your numbers so you can see what marketing does for you. And then not just as a category, right? But your different lead sources, your different companies you work with and so on, because then you can track back where to invest more money. And just a little secret for our listeners, it's not like there's a silver bullet. There's not one lead source where like, oh yeah, that's the one, forget everything else. For most of our businesses, various different lead sources will all produce new customers and new revenue. So it's not about picking one. But you do want to know that maybe your Facebook ads produce not as well as your Google ads. But it doesn't mean you should cut them off. It just means be aware of how much you spend and where you spend. Now, if you drill in one level deeper and you look at this campaign versus that campaign, and one of them produces leads at $10 a lead, and one produces them at $1 a lead, well, maybe you think about the difference in how much you spend where.
Right. So it all comes back to the data. That's what I'm really taking away from this conversation.
If we can get super nerdy on this, and this only makes sense when you have like a higher volume of data, but you can track back, if you can track back your customer lifetime value all the way back up to lead source, which campaign, which ad, all that, that's really interesting. Because sometimes what we'll find is you'll have certain marketing campaigns that produce a disproportionately large number of leads, but those leads aren't the highest quality to turn into customers. So you might get and I've had this working with agencies before, they'll run ads for us, like, oh my gosh, look at all these leads coming in. And I'm looking at the opt-ins, and they're in all capital letters, they're Hotmail addresses, they've got misspelled things, and I'm like, these are garbage quality leads. The emails are bouncing, and they don't turn into customers. And the agency feel they're doing a great job. They're patting themselves on the back that, hey, we're producing leads. And I'm like, well, I don't care about the leads. I care about the revenue, right? So again, going back to tracking the revenue all the way back up. If your marketing company is just looking at how many impressions they get you or how many clicks or whatever, like that's a starting point. But the deeper down the funnel you can go with them, the better. Because really, at the end of the day, the only reason you're spending on marketing is to produce more revenue. So tie them all together.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I feel like we could have a whole separate conversation just on that topic alone.
Only if we can
Not all
screen share
leads are,
spreadsheets.
yeah, not all leads are created equal, quality over quantity. And the other thing I just want to say too on that point, Jeremy, is like, you kind of touched on a little bit with like, you don't just want to focus on one lead source, right? We talked about that at the very beginning. We want to diversify. And with our marketing, it's really important too to remember that somebody's journey along, from learning about us to becoming a client, there are so many touch points that happen, especially in the service-based space of like that contribute to someone's decision to eventually work with you. And so, yes, it's important to know where the lead came from, where did they originate from? And I think it's equally as important to try as best as you can to piece together all the different touch points that they had before they became a client, which again, that's a whole nother conversation for another day, I think.
Well, the quality over quantity thing, you're so spot on with that, Kristi. There were partners we're working with to run webinars, and they would email their list and get people onto a webinar, and we'd sell on the webinar. And we had this one affiliate who came to us and had an email list of about 250,000. And we're like, oh man, like this is going to be like, I don't even know if our webinar software can handle this. This is going to be huge, but we'll figure this out. What do you know? Like, emails his list. We know the emails are going out. We had, I don't know, like 6 registrations. And like 1 or 2 people showed up. Like it was complete trash. Like this was the most beat up, oldest, abused list. And it produced terribly. Yes. And then with this other prospective person we're going to work with, and he had a really small list. He only had like 600 people on his email list. But like we knew him. He was a friend of our friend. We said, yeah, let's do this. And I'll tell you, we had, I think, over 100 people on that call. We had our highest close rate we'd ever had. And so we then found out that he had a small list, but they were all his high end, like paying him 4 figures a month, VIP continuity customers. Yeah. These were buyers. These were compliant customers who did whatever he told them to do. So he said, join me on this webinar. They did. He said, buy. Yeah. They bought. That quality was off the charts. And the other one that had the huge quantity was complete garbage quality.
Yes. Yeah, that is so often the case. We've definitely talked about that in some other episodes on the show with different emails, definitely one of them, other areas as well. Jeremy, we are running over on time. I think we're going to have to schedule more conversations to have you back on the show. But as we get ready to wrap up here, what is a last piece of advice or lesson learned that you want to leave listeners with?
Know your numbers. I mean, from marketing at the most simplistic level, have a basic spreadsheet. As you're fancier, have a dashboard and connected tools and all that. That's great. But know your numbers. Write it on a postcard. Put it on a whiteboard somewhere. Track your numbers and build your systems around that. And that'll, let the numbers guide you.
Yes. Love it. Great advice. Not surprised it's centered on numbers. I love that we were able to nerd out on marketing data today together.
Oh, yeah.
Jeremy, very lastly, as we wrap up here, how can people connect with you and learn more about the work that you do?
You can find me over at yourbusinessgrowthplaybook.com. You can find out more information on the book there, my process, my whole checklist for success and everything else. You can also connect with me and so much more. So that's over at yourbusinessgrowthplaybook.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me on. This is great.
All right, everybody. Until